Okay, so this is one location that we're considering putting the cameras. The cameras will be facing the direction that I'm currently standing, which happens to be north. One thing we liked about the old location was that the cameras just accidentally, we just happened to place them in a northerly direction, which turned out to be great because we didn't get a lot of glare or problems from the sun like we would if the cameras are facing east or west. So this is a north view. You can see in the background there's a downed tree, and then there's this giant root ball. Kind of zoom in on that thing. We would have to cut that root ball off and get rid of that. And I'll walk over there in a minute and show you an interesting thing over in that area. But this is the north view. You can see we got some trees. I don't know why this tree right here looks so far away. It's like 10 feet from me, but for whatever reason, the camera's making it look like it's way away. So we've got this nice clearing right here, which is nice and flat, which would be great to put the feeding area. If I kind of get down, this would kind of be the view that you would be looking at. So originally we had thought that that down tree would be more of a feature, but now that we've cut it flat, it's laying on the ground, it's not that big of a deal, so we're not too concerned about it. But I am concerned about that really, just bonked on the head by an acorn. But the root ball is an issue. So this is the north view. I said there's nothing really interesting. We don't have any really cool wood vines out here like we did at the old place. Which is something I'm really gonna miss. I enjoyed watching the possums climb all over that. So here's this particular view. I'm gonna move to a different location to show you another option. Okay, so I've walked about 25-30 feet to the left, and now I'm facing more northeast. You can still make out the downed tree in the background. You can see its root ball right there, and the tree that you see right here was the tree that was on the left hand side from location number 1. We've got this little block on the ground because this is just where we originally thought that this would be a great spot for the feeding area. It's nice and flat, but it does sort of angle down towards that downed tree, which is good because we want to be at the highest point so that water will run off. The problem at the old location was we were sort of in sort of a low area just over time from, we were a lot closer to the marshes over there, and so when storms would come or there'd be, a really high tide and a storm, we would get a lot of flooding. Y'all remember all of a sudden we would get a lake out there. So we want to be up a little bit higher. So this would be the view. I'm going to kind of crouch down here. That the camera would see basically about this height. And I've got this little tree right in front of me. So let me move around this little tree in front of me. So this kind of be the view that we'd see. You can still kind of make out the tree in the background. You can sort of see it there. It's laying on the ground, so it's not going to fall and hurt anything. I like this view because you can see a lot of the natural green undergrowth there, and you can really you can see the critters coming if they're coming from the deeper part of the forest. So this isn't a bad view. I like this one. And let me show you another idea. Okay, so I'm back at the first location where I'm basically facing north. I'm standing a little bit closer than I was. I was going to show you another option that's over here, but I don't think that's going to work. And I remember me and Chris talking about it. You can start to see these, I don't know if you can make out these, but you can from the shadows, that there's sort of these indentations. There is a long kind of a natural gully that, I gotta be careful so I don't fall into it, that kind of flows down through here. So this puts this at a low spot. Even though the view looks pretty cool. When I'm facing this direction, I'm more north-northwest. I like this view. It seems like right now, because of the time of day, you can see the sun in the background. But of course, that's just because it's this time of day. As the day goes on, the sun will move around in the background. But this location, well, I think it's kind of cool because you can really see a lot of this tree. It is pretty low here. And if I kind of crouch down, you can sort of see how the ground, the greenery in front of me is a lot higher up, and that's because I'm at a low spot. And it only kind of bulges right here, and then it drops back off as it goes towards that tree. So we would probably have a lot of issues with water pooling. Plus, there's right in this general area, let's see if I can get back up. Right in this general area, I said there's all these sort of undulations everywhere. Oh, here's really bad. It really drops down here. And here it really drops down. This would just not be, it would just not be a really safe area, I don't think, to come out here for the critters. It would be a lot to navigate. So location number 3, while it looks pretty as the background, it's just not a very feasible option. So I did want to go show you the little interesting thing about that downed tree and the root ball. So let me head over there. Okay, so here is that downed tree that we keep talking about in the background. There's the root ball right here. You can see where Chris has sawed through the root ball from the tree, and that's because we wanted to get the tree to lay on the ground. Originally, it was sort of hovering above the ground, anywhere from a couple of inches to a couple 8 or 9 feet. Down there at the other end, we end up cutting off the very front end of it because it was leaning against one of those pine trees there. So we cut that off. That part still is sort of sticking above the ground. We may go back and cut that part off. We haven't decided. It's pretty stable where it's at, so we're not too worried. I'm gonna go back here. But back to this root ball, we're gonna haul this thing out of here. To the left of this root ball is this hole, and it's starting to fill up with water because it rained really bad from was that a hurricane or tropical storm, Nicole? So we've got this, what we call the little frog pond. At first I thought that this was the hole where this tree fell from, but there's a pretty big gap between the two. But then once we started poking around, we can see that this tree just literally fell over. So it's right where it fell over at. So this hole, though, we were looking at it and we can tell that somebody made this hole. This wasn't like a natural sinkhole or something. Somebody had been digging it. The previous owners, they just burned all their trash, whether it was paper or glass or anything. They just burned it all. And we think what they were doing when their fire pit got too full was that they were digging holes and burying it. So basically they made themselves little landfills. And this hole, or basically, at first I thought, well, maybe we'll cut, once we cut this root ball off, we'll just drag it over here and throw it in this hole and fill in the hole. But maybe not. Maybe we'll just leave this as is and have a little smallish pond. It's deep. It doesn't look it right now, but it's what you can see to ground level on the left-hand side. It's probably, I don't know, 2.5 feet. And from the water down, it's probably another 2.5 feet. So it's a pretty deep hole. So I think we might just leave this hole and have like a natural little instant pond, I guess. It's kind of neat though, because there are lots of little hoppy toads and frogs that live around it. So it's kind of nice to have it here. So we can probably use this also as one of the catch basins for water drainage. So yeah, I think we're just going to leave this hole in the earth here. So, yeah, that's that. Before I walk away, I did want to talk about why we're not considering going too much further beyond this tree back into this forest. As you can start to see, it starts to get pretty dense back there. There's a lot of just natural growth back there. The previous owners really didn't do much back there. We know there's a deer stand. We stumbled across it. It's dilapidated. They couldn't use it as deer stand anymore, thank goodness. We can't find it anymore, and we've been back there a couple times and we just can't remember where it's at. But it gets really, really hard to walk around back there, so it's just not very accessible, and it would be a little bit too far to get all the plumbing and whatnot back there. So kind of where we're at is a pretty good distance. Like I said, there's probably 3 or 4 more acres back there, and we'll just leave it. That'll be a great home for the critters. So okay, so I'm back at the northwest angle. You can see that little block of wood that we put down, and if I pan around to the right where I'm starting to head more west, you'll see another down tree. We haven't decided what we're going to do with that. We might just leave that one there. It's not really doing anything. But then you start to see this. This is a pile of tree roots here. There's a big giant pile right there. There's another pile that looks separate. And then there's even more. You can kind of make out there's an old Connex shed back there. But this is all this piled up wood that we're going to get the tractor and pull out because it's just not doing the forest any good. I'll get over there and show you a little bit closer view. So this is just one pile of tree stumps that we're going to pull out of here. The pile next to it, and try to walk in the hall here, there's quite a bit of debris piled up, and then you'll see this sort of tall thing. I'm going to try to get around this. We're half debating about leaving this one, and let's see if I can watch this little tree here. We might kind of trim some of this stuff around, but there it looks like there's something living down in these little slots down here. So we're inclined to tidy this up a little bit so it doesn't look so gothic, but leave this because it seems to be a little bit of a critter housing. But then there's this pile here. We dug around it. We don't think there's anything living in that pile there. And then I'll try to come over here. Here's another section that we're gonna drag out, and then I hope you're not getting a lot of the glare from the sun. And this is the pile that we started to cut up the other day, then realized that, boy, there's a lot of wood here. And even in these little blocks that we cut, they're super heavy. So we're just gonna, bring the tractor here and just load these up on the bucket and haul them out. If I walk a little bit more to the left and try to do this and not step on little trees. There's this, I don't know what this is, just like an old power pole or something that's just laying here. And then there's, look, more junk. Railroad ties. Cannot stand the smell of railroad ties. Ugh, awful. And then there's these barrels that they had cut some of these barrels apart and we're using them in the greenhouse. They filled them full of soil and we're using them as planters. These barrels give me the heebie-jeebies, so they gotta go. I don't know what that white frame is, but this whole thing is a lean-to connected to 40-foot Connex box that is pretty far gone. It's got to go. So we're going to get somebody out here and come haul this off. But you can see all this junk that's piled up. You can see part of our boat here that we never use. So there's some junk in the Connex box. I'm not going in there. It's creepy. Ooh, it's creepy. And then there's a bunch of junk behind that box too. Of course there is. Why wouldn't there be? So, but all this has got to, we're going to get all this pulled out. And we have a friend that says he wants some of these railroad ties. He said that when we first moved here, and he said he would be by, and it's been, we moved here in June. So if he really wanted them, he'd have been here by now. So we're probably going to just cut these things up and take them somewhere else, or see if there's a landscaper that wants them or something. But they got to go. They got to go soon. So, and then here is this giant brush pile that you can kind of make out. The field is here on the right. Here's the field. And then this is the stuff that I've been piling up. This is just one pile that I got. That's just the most obnoxious looking one. So those are just sticks that were from all these down trees, and just so that you could walk through the forest and not trip over all these. And I tried to pick up any stick that was laying on something that might be keeping something from growing straight and tall. So like an example would be, see how this pile of stick is laying here, but it's laying across these little trees that are trying to grow. So if I have to move the stick gets put in the pile. So we'll get a chipper out here. We're also going to get a wood splitter. Once we move all this out of the woods, we're going to move it over to the left-hand side of the field, and we're going to split all those logs and then put them in the chipper. So and then we'll just spread that around the forest, I guess. So all right, so but here from this angle, in fact, where I'm standing, where this pole is, like I said, we're eventually going to get rid of this whole lean-to doodad, but we're going to put the critter feeding shed right through here, and then we'll be able to carve a little path kind of straight down this way and then over to get to the feeding area. You can kind of make out the down tree in the background. Where is the down tree in the back? Where? I can't find me. Whoops, sorry. There is the down tree. Oh, sorry. I was afraid it was going to do that. That's the down tree in the background. So, okay. So that's kind of what we're considering. Okay, I did want to show you this. You can see the field on the right-hand side. That's the field that looks into the forest where I'm standing. Right now I'm facing east, and you can see it looks pretty thick and dense over here, which is good, because just beyond where you can start to see some daylight, that's somebody else's property. We know eventually they're going to probably put up some kind of subdivision or something over there. So we want to keep this area nice and thick and dense, and we wanted to keep CritterVision away from this side of the property so that you don't hear any ambient sounds or whatnot. So we're pretty much not doing anything with this eastern part of our property line. We're just going to leave it nice and thick as is. In the background you can see sort of a dark spot. That's another pile of trees that the previous owner piled up. We're going to leave those two because that's on that eastern side of the property. Plus, when we went over and looked at it, it looks like there's quite a few spots where critters are living in or amongst those trees, because you can see little paths that are cut out around it. So they're living over in that area. So we're going to leave that there. And then as I kind of pan around and try to walk and not step on anything, it sort of has a clearing here, which it's sort of odd because everything else in the forest is kind of dense, but we think that the original owners cleared all this stuff out. Right here, actually, it's hard to tell, but there's sort of a berm, and when we started digging through there, everything in there is sort of charred. I mean, the forest has covered it a little bit, but it looks like when their burn pile, they didn't take their garbage anywhere. They just burnt everything. But when their burn pile got too high, they would bring it out here and pile it up here. So all this underneath this, between this tree here and this tree right here, this ridge, is just remnants of old, charred, burned stuff. So we're going to leave that because the forest has taken over it, so that's fine. Let's see, you can see in the background there's that downed tree we keep talking about. This would be the top edge of the tree, the furthest from the root ball. I'll try to walk and not step on baby trees. Let's see if I can get back there. Ooh, I don't want to make anybody woozy. Now it's getting harder to see, but there's the down tree in the background. So, oh, and where I'm standing right now, we thought that potentially this might be a good location because it's got this kind of pretty tree here, but it is sort of in a low spot, and it's just a little too problematic as far as we would have a lot of problem with water drainage. You can kind of see over here through the shadowing, it looks like it dips down right here, and it does. It's quite a low spot. And then that low spot kind of travels along. So even though this is a pretty cool looking tree, it just, it wouldn't be a good spot. We would have problem with water drainage. And there's the root ball in the background there. So kind of see where we're at.